Welcome to the Along the Gravel Road podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Barona. Really excited to talk to Justin Hutchinson today. Justin is a 26-year-old who got to start playing football and blending counter-service smoothies. Now he's a living testament that empathy and compassion can take you any and everywhere. Justin leads new business at ThreeSixtyEight, a local agency here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is how I met Justin. He thrives to be uncommon in creating a new mold for what African-American males or any BIPOC can achieve. He's creating a new example for what can be accomplished when you prioritize people over prizes, awareness over accolades, and love over hate. In this episode, he'll share more about how his life experiences have shaped him into the man he is today, from trauma to triumphs, and the continual lessons he's had to learn and relearn to defy the odds. He also wrote that, and it's a beautiful introduction, so it made my life a little bit easier as I'm sort of introducing what we're going to talk about today. I'm excited to jump in and to have you all here. Before we jump in, I do want to talk about an amazing production company that is producing this podcast, Ray Media Group. If you're looking for a company that can deliver an amazing product and an experience, then Ray Media Group is who you need to call. They specialize in weddings, podcasts, commercials, YouTube, business promotions, and it's really been great to work with a company who strives to create this experience for their clients. And so you're not just a number to them. They take the time to build these relationships. Trust me, I know from experience. We've been working together for a little bit now, and it's been amazing. And they put up with me, which is a great thing. So you can check out their website at raymediagroup.com. That's RHEA mediagroup.com, or give Ken a call at 225-772-7504. How's it going? Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. I'm happy to be here. Always great to always be chilling with you, of course, but even beyond that, talking to the folks that you have, it's going to be awesome too.
Yeah. All right. So we can dive right in and, have you share your story. I know it's going to come up. There's going to be some things that we're able to really touch on throughout sort of this journey you've been on, a lot of great talking points and things that our audience is really going to connect with. So have at it.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I said, my name is Justin, born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but my family is all from Jamaica. So I'm a first generation kid. Came here, my family put me in private school, and my mom and dad obviously came here with the American dream, the family, the love life, everything, get the house and, raise good children. But when I was about 4 years old, my parents did divorce. There was infidelity in the relationship, and it was rough, but I was still kind of young. I didn't really know much about it, and life continues on as usual. Everybody always gets confused when I say that part of my story because they were like, what in the world does this have to do with your long-term story? But obviously we'll get into it. So, I grew up like a regular kid, going to private school, Christian Life Academy. And then as I grew up, basically, I started gravitating towards sports. Like I said, they might not be able to tell exactly from the camera, but I am like 6'4" and 200 plus pounds. So, I definitely was a large kid. I was always very tall, very big. So football, basketball was like really what I was growing into, and Christian Life was known for basketball. Like we won championships every year. Football, we were getting good at, and football is really what I did gravitate towards long term. But, entering 13 years old and, I'm going into freshman year in high school, I'm already playing varsity ball, but I'm finding out that now I'm going to be on the varsity basketball team. It was a great day whenever I got the letter from the coach, but my mom had to pick me up from school that day, and she was just very stoic. She's like, okay, we got to go to the hospital. I'm like, man, for what? Like, what do we got to go to the hospital for? It turns out my dad, like I mentioned, he cheated on my mom whenever, I was about 4 years old. And, I found out when I was about 13 years old that there was another situation that happened that a lot of people didn't know about. So it made me distance myself from him. But I knew he was having really bad headaches. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? The times I did talk to him, he said it was going to be like heart-related stuff. Apparently he had like some heart issue that was causing the brain stuff, or at least that's what the doctors thought. So my mom picks me up that day to take me to the hospital. We show up there and he's sitting on the bed and my siblings are all there and the doctors was waiting for me to show up the whole time. And he's like, okay, is everybody here? And I'm like, yeah. He says, all right, well, we hate to inform you, because my dad went to the ER instead of going to the heart procedure that he had scheduled, because he's like, there's no way this heart issue is causing my head issue. So, whenever I make it there, they basically tell us that he has 2 golf ball sized tumors in his head. And from there, my life as a 13, 14-year-old completely changes. It's like I go from thinking about the sports, the girls, everything, to now like, okay, my dad has a very serious health issue. They removed the tumors and they found out he had stage 4 brain cancer. And they're basically telling me he has like a year and a half to live is the median lifespan of the cancer he had. So, like I said, my life changed drastically at a young age. And I grew up very, very, very quick. Had to, like I said, things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Like my dad would forget my name. He would have to wear diapers. He would use himself. It's the most embarrassing and vulnerable that I think he's ever been, but also it's the most damaging for me to go from being the kid to being the parent in some ways.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. So my life changed vastly, but all that said, my dad still entered remission. Like he still entered remission at the 1.5 year mark. So it was really exciting. Like, wow, he's going to make it. He beat stage 4 cancer. So like from there, I just kept on taking off with football, was thriving, doing really good in that. And I was set to make my commitment my senior year. I went to a small school. Christian Life is like a 1A, so pretty small, but still had a good bit of offers on the table. I let most of those offers go and held out because I wanted some other ones. I ended up getting Nicholls State out in Thibodaux. Shout out to the Colonels. But whenever I made my commitment, the coach, he was moving from one school to the next. He got there and he called me one day and he was like, son, I got some bad news for you. I'm like, what's up? I just got over here to Nicholls. A lot of these kids are on half scholarships. They've been paying to go to school. I'm like, okay, coach, what does that mean for me? And he's like, that means for your first year, we have to cut your scholarship. You'd be a preferred walk-on, and then we try and get you on scholarship the second year. Still, Nicholls is not cheap either. Like, don't let people tell you Nicholls is cheap. It's not cheap. It's pretty expensive. And I didn't really plan on paying for college at all. So I was like, all right, coach, let me talk to my family and see what's up. I'm literally about to pick up the phone because we all decided, like, just go ahead and go, right? But I hadn't spoken to my dad. My dad was living in California with his mom. He had moved over there to be with her. Right before I pick up the phone to call, my dad calls me and he's like, hey, son, I fell. I went to the hospital and we found out the cancer's back. So once again, being faced with another adult decision, having to grow up very, very quick. And I chose to table my dreams of playing college football to take care of my dad till he would pass away about 8 months later. So really tough decision I made, but once again, the right one. It's a very adult move I had to make right there. But his only dream for me was to go to college after that and get into a 4-year university. I was going to BRCC to get some prereqs, but he wanted me to go to LSU. So I transferred over there, started working at Smoothie King, where I grew very quickly. I was managing multiple locations within a couple months. And then after that, one of my regular customers was Kenny Wynn, our CEO at 368. And he's like, man, what do you want to do for a living? I was like, man, I want to be an entrepreneur, not knowing what the hell that means. To be an entrepreneur, you got to do something. But, obviously I had that spirit of creativity. I want to do something and create something for myself. He's like, well, what are you going to college for? I was like, marketing. Wow, I own a marketing agency. And then him and Jay Barrows, they offered me an internship. From there, within about 1.5 years, they ended up giving me the keys to new business. And I've been blessed enough to double revenue year over year for the most part until these past 2, where we're still growing as an agency. But, dropped out of college as part of that too. So that brought a whole set of imposter syndrome. Oh my God, like what are my things that we'll talk about in the podcast, I'm sure. But yeah, a lot of different things have happened for the betterment of my life. Like, it's been difficult things that I overcame, got me to where I am professionally. And then even now, since becoming a professional at 368, like the awards, the accolades, the recognition, and the opportunity to tell my story. Like right now, I'm featuring a national PSA led by the Ad Council talking about my life as a star, which is someone who was skilled through alternative routes, me not having a 4-year degree, but still making it in corporate America. So that's my story in a nutshell. I've told it a good bit, but
it's a good one. And so we're going to start kind of from the beginning, I think, and then go from there.
Yeah.
This first moment where you're 13, 14 and you're getting this news. There's a lot of, I'm sure, emotions going on there. What did that look like for you? Like, were you able to get support there, or were you really just kind of pushing through? You said becoming an adult. That's pretty intense,
Hey y'all, Brandon Barker here with Barker Property Management and Commercial Real Estate. We use our knowledge and experience to offer a comprehensive plan and provide property management, commercial brokerage services across Louisiana. Our business was founded on the value of being responsive to our customers and protecting our clients' assets. We proudly support the You on a Loan project and the Along the Gravel Road podcast.
So what was that time like for you? Did you have support for what the things you were dealing with, or did you really just have to kind of just keep moving?
Yeah, I don't want to disrespect anybody in my family or friends that were there for me, because definitely I had a lot of people there. But in terms of the journey that I faced from 13 up until probably about 19, it was very like alone. Like I definitely had to battle it by myself. Reason being, I'm the baby in the family. So like they always like, you would expect people to care for the baby, but even though I'm the baby, like I have the most energy, the most charisma, like I'm like the lifeblood in some ways to my family. So whenever everything was going down, people would just call me and check in on me to be like, hey, are you all right? And I'll be like, yeah, but it's not like in a, are you all right? Like genuinely caring, as it's more of like a pulse for them. Like by asking me, if I tell them I'm okay, then they will be okay. I remember after my dad died, actually, one of my aunts said that, like we were going into the funeral, they were like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm like, I'm okay as I can be. And then they were like, okay, good. Because if you're okay, then we're all going to be fine. Like, you know, we're really, everybody just wants to make sure you're good. And if you're good, then we're good. I'm like, so I didn't have the vulnerability, or I have the freedom to not be okay. So I had to push through. And, you know, at school, whenever I graduated, people didn't even know that I was battling that the whole time. So like I do a really good job of internalizing it, and I'm a very positive person. So like I only let people see the positivity. But, you know, in some ways, I don't think I got to grieve my dad's loss until maybe the past couple of years.
Yeah, and you know, I think exactly like you were saying, it's not like you're trying to say anything bad towards all these people that surrounded you. They probably just were doing the best they could with what they had. I mean, no one really knows how to deal with all of this, you know. However, that doesn't mean that it didn't impact you and that it didn't make things even more difficult for you going through that. What did, so you said you just recently dealt with kind of like faced some of this grief and kind of are starting to go through that process. What did that look like?
The rough answer for that one is, I made mistakes that I saw my dad make whenever I was younger. Like, you know, infidelity, that like I got to see the bad parts of my dad. My dad was like, I also want to say this too, like, although he did pass away, like he was, whenever he died, probably the most godly and heavenly person I've ever touched in my life. Like so connected. His spirit was like overcoming while he was here. Like, and he fixed everything in his life. The second he found out he had cancer, like everything flipped. I love him so much. And the reason why I talk about his story is not to say like, oh, my dad was bad. It's actually like my dad lived a rough life and flipped it around and became everything I needed in terms of a father. I just wish I would have had more time with him. But yeah, I mean, I started to make some mistakes as I got older. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. You see it and you're like, wow, like I'm falling into the cycle that came before me. And I had to face that. And like I said, whenever I looked at it, I was like, damn, I can't be like this. And my dad, he didn't want this for me. Like, I know how he passed away. And he was like, it's like, I remember one moment where he's literally sitting in the bed and crying. He's like, I really like love your mom and I want your mom to know I'm so sorry. And this is like, I'm like 17 years old. I could tear up just thinking about that. But he's like talking about how sorry he is for what happened with him and my mom. And I'm like, dude, like, and I saw myself get in that position and I didn't want to make that same mistake again. So that's one thing. And I'm also about to be having a kid. So it's like, part of that was like, okay, cool. I got to think about what I need to be for him and how I can give him all the best parts of me and the Hutchinson name. Like, he's going to be one of the first ones. He's the first boy to carry our name. So it's like, I get to impart all of the good things from myself, from my dad and everything, and really show him what it means to be the good Hutchinson man that I know. So, yeah.
Was there were there any support, systems in place? What tools did you use as you were going through this process?
Goodness. Tools I use for going through this process. Honestly, I mean, therapy has been the most beneficial. I've had like 2 different therapists that I go to regularly, which is like taboo in the Black community. Like, don't go to therapy. You're fine. Be mentally strong. That's all a load of, can I cuss here?
Absolutely.
Shit. It's a load of shit. But yeah, like I go to therapy. I learned so many things through that about myself and about the journey I'm entering. So that's one thing I recommend everybody find a good therapist. Outside of that, I consume like weird amounts of like TikTok and Instagram videos. Like you'll be surprised. Like really, if you tap into the right things on Instagram and TikTok, you will get like really helpful content to get you through hard times. Like there's one right now, as I'm about to be a dad, there's one called The Tired Dad on Instagram. And I look at that and it's like, you're not allowed to be vulnerable as a man, like whenever you're going through this process, because 1, you're not carrying the baby. 2, the woman's going through a lot more and it's your job to obviously support her, support the baby and make sure everything feels good there. But society makes you feel like you have to be kind of stoic about it. Like you can't like be vulnerable. This TikTok or this Instagram has all of like the deep thoughts that you have, like the intrusive thoughts that you never say anything about. So like, for instance, like there's one video where it's like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to have a kid, and it's like, then like it changes the color, and it's like, will you be able to provide for them? Like, oh my God, they're gonna be so amazing, they're gonna be just like me. Are they gonna inherit your trauma? Like all the things that you ask yourself that you probably wouldn't verbalize, like that Instagram is great. And like it helps me know like I'm not alone in that journey of like, okay, I'm excited. I know how I have all the raw tools to be a great dad, but like still am figuring it out and coping with my own emotions.
And that's completely okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think that's the same reason, you know, TikTok and Instagram and things like that, I think gets a lot of flack for like misinformation, you know, or you know, whatever that is. But it's also the opposite of that effect too. It's that we're now normalizing having these conversations because it is like in this enormous platform, you're able to reach so many more people than we have been before and connect with people in a way that was not, you know, that you're able to really find somebody that is dealing with something so similar to you and can impart whatever they've learned. It's like we're all sharing our therapists, you know, which is wonderful. So that's part of what, you know, what we're trying to do here with the podcast too. So I think that's great. Is there anything as far as like that process of when you were about to start therapy, was there anything, you mentioned sort of the stigma in the Black community, was there anything for you that may have kept you from doing it? Or was it one of those decisions that was easy to make?
I think the only thing that kept me from going to therapy initially was the idea that like I can help myself. It's like, I'll be fine, I'll push through this, like perseverance. I think that's like halfway on the like Black stereotypes and halfway on like the own toxic masculinity thing. Like I'm strong enough to mentally do this myself. So I think that I had to get over that hump and be like, me going to therapy is actually not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And then even more so like doubling down on going to therapy whenever I'm good and not whenever I'm bad. Like whenever I first went, it was in a bad phase. But like then I learned that it's like working out. Like as you go, you get stronger, you get stronger, you get stronger, and you get more and more self-aware. And like I can tell the difference between whenever I'm not going to therapy and whenever I am. And also whenever I'm in a good state and a bad state. But like I prefer to go when I'm good. And like I said, just getting over those first two humps of like, okay, stereotypes, and then thinking I can fix everything myself and I can make everything make sense. Because a lot of times whenever you try and put things together in your mind, it's not going to add up exactly. You know, you need external perspective.
Absolutely. You know, for you, I mean, all your life you've had to be that person, you know, for other people, for yourself, you've had to do that. And so it makes sense that that would be you know, a barrier for you to reaching out for help the first time. But I'm really glad you did. It sounds like it's been really impactful for you. As you're in this place now, are you able to like, have you looked back and are you able to kind of identify any places in your life, you know, of things that maybe you would have done differently, or that you could tell that, you know, the grief and the loss impacted you in a way that you couldn't see before?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 20/20 on everything.
Yes.
I will say that I wish I didn't go through a lot of the experiences I did, but I'm actually like thankful for all of them, so I don't regret anything I did. It got to show me different versions of myself, and I think that's the biggest thing is like you get to see you and your purest and best and what you want to be, and you get to see yourself at your worst and things that you never want to do again and things that you never want to feel again. And you get to see whenever you're faced with a challenge, like this is how you're going to react and this is how you would do it. You just learn. I think the biggest thing, and like I think I was decent at it, is like whenever things come at you, you have to learn from them, like in the moment. Like don't sit there and be like whatever and blow it off. Like make sure you learn in every moment. Like take the time to analyze it. And like even in my discussions with Mariah, and like we're having discussions and conversations. I don't call them arguments. We don't argue. It's like, because it's always us versus a problem. But even in those moments, like I seek to learn the deeper thing, because yes, we may be having a disagreement on something relatively small, but there's something deeper to learn in that. Same thing for relationships, for yourself. And my journey is like, keep in mind there's something to learn in every interaction. And that's one thing that I think I would continue to take with me and that I would impart to anybody else is like, just learn from everything. Like don't just take it as like oh, that happened and keep it moving. The nonchalant behavior is going to get you nowhere. But the critical thinking behind why this happened and what you can do to, if it's a good thing, make it happen again, or if it's a bad thing, never do it again, then like that's the main difference.
Yeah, that's actually a topic that comes up a lot in different ways on this podcast. This idea of, part of it is that a lot of times we're just, we don't want to face whatever it is. But some of it is that the world just tells us just keep going, just keep going. But if you're not taking the time to really sit with whatever it is, process it, learn from it, grow from it, identify it as, whatever it is and what it means to you, it's going to be really hard to move forward from it without it then getting in the way of the next thing and the next thing. It's always gonna. So I think that's really great that you've gotten to that point and that you're striving to do that for yourself and now for this family that you're building. I think it's going to be really beautiful. So shifting a little bit to talk about, I know this idea of imposter syndrome has been a big topic, and I think that's something that a lot of people, I know I connect with that personally for sure. Talk a little bit about that and what your experience has been like with that.
Yeah, like I said, just from, one, I'll talk about the earliest time I faced it, like being the size that I was and being an athlete, like that was always what people considered me. Like they saw me, they even, like my nickname was Hutch. So like anytime I hear somebody say Hutch, I immediately know what phase of life they know me from, which is like athletics and football. So it's like, from that, it's like you go from being a football star and everybody expecting you to take one path, like go play college ball, maybe take a chance at the next level. And that's what your path is. Like you're put in that box by everybody else around you. And you also convinced yourself that that's all you're going to do, Granted, I always had bigger dreams, but just like that's a thought. Whenever I didn't do that, it's like that sent a whole bunch of imposter syndrome. You basically faced with this big question of like, who the hell am I? And the reality is, you see all these football players on like Saturday nights playing for LSU. Maybe 6 of those kids are going to go play ball at the next level, and the rest are going to be having the exact same moment I did, where they're like, who the hell am I and what do I have to offer this world? And that's just a big moment of depression. Like one of my best friends, Brandon, he ended up going to Nichols. He was an earlier recruit and signed there. And I was talking to him the other day and I was like, bro, I went through it on a smaller scale, but like whenever you graduated and you were done playing football at Nichols and, you didn't go play at the next level, like, how'd you feel? He's like, bro, we hung out a lot of times and I was severely depressed. Like I would go home and be like mad, frustrated with myself. Like I had anger. I was like, it's crazy. You go through that moment as an athlete. So I think for me, that was my first bout with it, is like, who am I? And I really had to have like this moment of self-realization, like, okay, get to know myself and what I have to offer the world. And I figured out what my passion is going forward. Like I know my purpose on this earth, and that's to positively, basically every person I come in contact with, I need to positively have an interaction with them. Like I don't want it to be like you pass by me, we never speak again. I want to positively impact your life for the better. Like that's what my goal is with every person I meet. So at a moment there, like a self-realization of like, what is my purpose on this earth? What was I given by God that I can use going forward in any kind of way? And then you fast forward to 368 and now being in the marketing world and you're working for $1 million agency, you're in control of millions of dollars of revenue. And, you know a little bit, you know what you know about marketing based on college, but nothing can prepare you for like when you're on the job. Like it's just different. And I had to constantly remind myself that like the skills I had are exactly why I was there. But like there are people that make it to the position I'm in with like a college degree. Like that gets them in. Like I don't have that. I made it in solely off of what makes me who I am. So it's like constantly having that doubt, like, oh my God, is this client talking to another person who's more savvy and can speak marketing better than I can? Or stuff like that. Like I can't speak the lingo like they can. Maybe I'm not as smart as them. And these are all irrational thoughts, but like you just feed it to yourself consistently. Like, oh my God, like I'm the fake in this group. Like everybody else is the real deal. I'm not the real deal. And I know you're probably gonna ask, but like my one piece of advice to anybody who's battling with imposter syndrome, and like you could put this as the big sticker on this whole entire podcast probably, but your imposter syndrome is your X factor. Like the very thing that you're afraid of being found out about is exactly what makes you special. For me, my imposter syndrome is like, man, I'm just a people person. I know how to connect with people and that's how I help them. But like, maybe I can't speak the technical terms all that much, but that's not what I'm not special because I can speak all the technical terms. I'm special because I know how to take all the technical terms. I am smart and I can put that down in a way that people can consume, understand, feel, and I do it in an authentic way. I try to always help every person I come in contact with. Once I realized that the thing I was being an imposter behind was what made me special, it made every day a lot easier. Yeah. Not to say that like I don't battle it still, but I know that my imposter syndrome is an X factor. So now whenever it does arise, I perceive it as such. Yeah. I don't perceive it as inferiority. I literally perceive it as superiority. Like I'm better in this way. Kind of like with my age too. Like I'm the youngest kid in my position probably. Like leading a business development agency, no, like you don't see 25 and 26-year-olds doing that. Yeah. So that being said, like I had to think about that. Like, oh my God, everybody else is so much older, more seasoned. But the fact that I'm younger is an advantage because I'm more in touch with the next generation. I'm right on the gap of it. So all these things that you're an imposter for are actually your X factor.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I mean, all these things play into this imposter syndrome. You're talking about comparison, you're talking about, am I good enough, or, what, who am I to do this or to be this person? But you said it. I mean, in the beginning of this, you said, like, you no longer, at a certain point, you had to decide this for yourself, but you no longer connected your identity to an external source. You found it within yourself. And it's that mission, your own life mission, that you decided on, your value of leaving this positive impact with every person, that has now got you to to now being able to be, this successful professional, and it's going to help you be a better dad, and that's going to help you in all these different aspects of your life. And that's not a small thing to get to a place where you're like, my identity isn't attached to all of these things, because so many of it's so much easier to look external and say, this is who I am, and use this to build, to create who I am. Yeah. And it takes a lot of work to look inward, because you also have to do, face some of the stuff that might not be so great about that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's powerful. Like that's something that not a lot of people can get to.
I think the thing with that, like, to double down on it, is like that time by yourself is very scary. Like you mentioned, you're going to see like the good parts of yourself, but you also see the bad. And it's very like, oh goodness, like I need to figure this out real quick. Yes. But what I did was, and major shout out to Kenny. Like I said, if y'all know him, then you know the guy is like awesome. He encouraged me when I first got to 368 because he knew I was going through a really like tough time. I was struggling with identity crisis. He probably didn't know it was because like of football and me being new to marketing, but he just knew that like I needed it for myself. I think he thought it was attached to the relationship I was in, because like I had ended a relationship. So Kenny's like, I was telling him, I was like, man, I just need to go to Houston and be by myself. Like I'm going on a silent retreat, like turning off my phone. He's like, I'll tell you what, bro, I'll get you a hotel in Austin for 2 nights. Extend your trip, go to Houston, but then go to Austin for 2 nights. And then spend even more time with yourself and come back. And like, it was scary. Like it definitely was like weird being out there. My phone was off most of the time, but like I was surrounded by my own thoughts. And I had to like fend for myself. It's kind of like primal in a way. Like, yeah, we have money, we have cars, so it's not as rough. I'm not going to say it's rough, but I was out there and I had to like make connections with people. I had to talk to people. I had to figure out what was cool. I had to go to this place. I had to explore the world, just me, and like see it. And even though it was for a couple of days just by myself, like that silence, like it's deafening because it's revealing. Like it's going to reveal all the good and bad. And I push anybody, even when I'm teaching, like I talk to a lot of young kids who are entering like high school or even graduating high school and in college. I talk to NIL athletes about like, you need to spend that time by yourself. Like you need to take a silent retreat, because people are just so afraid of like being by themselves. But it's like, you have to be alone to not be alone eventually. Like that's kind of how it works. Like you have to sit with yourself, that way you can sit with others. And I think that that's what I did at a young age, and I continue to do periodically. Like I check in with myself at least once a year. I try and get away for a little bit and then just like really download what have I learned about myself and think, for the future. So yeah, you're right. Like just the time by yourself and being alone is so pivotal to your growth as an individual.
Which is so interesting, because you described this point in your life where you were going through all these difficult things as a kid and having to become an adult so quickly as being alone. And now look at you, like turning it around and saying like, this is when I am doing the most work is when I'm alone. And so it's vastly different, obviously, the way you've grown to be able to use that now.
Yeah.
So how we're kind of coming up to a little bit the end here, but what about some of your relationships with your family, your siblings and all of that? How have those shifted and evolved as you've gone through this sort of growth and healing process of facing this grief too? Have they done the same? What does that look like?
Love them a lot. I don't think they've done the work that I probably have. Like my brother definitely is more of the like stick to himself, like the original version, like the doesn't believe in therapy, like power through it yourself, be a man type dude. So I don't think he's faced it in entirety yet. I think he definitely needs to, and I love him. On his own time, he'll do it. But I think that he definitely needs to for his sake and his family's sake to figure out kind of what did he learn from the past, and our dad and everything and his trauma. Because I feel like he's tried to be tough for me too. And I know I can see it and I love him and respect him for it. But I always tell him, I'm like, hey, you don't have to be tough for me. Like, because I process myself, so I'm good. Like I've done the work. I'm like, I need you to do the work. That way you're good. So it's like I'm taking that role with him in our conversations lately. Like I need you to focus on you. So I think that that's where he's at in his journey with it. But like me and him have a good relationship. And with my sister, I think she took it hard when my dad passed. She really had a strong relationship with him. I always had a strong relationship with my mother. But she's doing a lot. She has a family. She's just graduating nursing school. She's doing a lot of great things for herself too. So with that, like, I think that she's been so focused on that maybe she hasn't time to heal either. She has to go through like a lot of things to probably soften her in the time. So I think she'll get to it. And then lastly, my mom, like, I think, you look back at it, my mom had a relationship after my dad, but I mean, I was able to arise at the point where I was like, you haven't forgiven yourself for everything that went down with my dad either. Like, and you need to heal from that. And like, she still loves my dad. I'm very like sure, especially after everything went down. I think she really still loves him. And I think she just maybe has a hard time admitting it. And that she still loves him because of everything that he did wrong, and she has to forgive him. She says she has, but I think she really needs to. And she needs to like embrace that love she has for my dad to move on with her life and truly be happy again. Because I think she suppressed it a lot for us. So that's how I think everybody in my family, my perception, it might not be reality, but I think that that's what, if I'm looking at all the relationships that they have with the trauma that we've all experienced, because it's a shared trauma. Exactly. I think that's how we've handled it differently. Not that any one way is better than the other, but I think that, the way I've done it has gotten me to a place where I can be more fully myself than they might be able to. And I just want that for everybody, to be your whole self and show up in all the ways you need to for yourself and others. So.
Yeah. And I think a part of that too is, and that's why I asked about it, is because you all did experience this together. Now you're probably, but the way you've sort of grown from it looks pretty different. Now. However, though, like with you just having these type of conversations, that's part of the reason why I find it so important to talk about the things that we've been through, because, you have no idea. I mean, there's been so many people in my family who have reached out and I know opened up conversations around mental health that they never would have done before. And, it's really just opening that up to it being okay, to just like you said, not being okay, which is something that we, that is very hard to sort of accept sometimes, is that's an okay place to be in too.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part of my family is like, it's just, I can't get them to do it, so like I have to break the cycle for myself and let them see it. It's kind of like how when you talk about God, like I said, if you're not that spiritual, what they say is basically the best example of God is literally living life the right way. And like people will see it and be like, I want what you have, and then you tell them. Like, you don't have to force it down their throat. So like, I don't try and force therapy and mental health and all that stuff on my family. I just want to like be a shining example of like, if you deal with these things, then like this is how it will be. Because I've seen that conversation goes awry. Like it becomes a defensive thing. Like, oh, you're coming at me in the way my life is lived. And it's like, no, it's not what it's about at all. It's just like, I'm telling you what I've experienced, and I would love for you to tap into like this level of joy and comfort I found with it. And like, if you have your own comfort, great, but like, I want to share that experience with you. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of Black families, like I said, it's just like, we don't talk about it. We keep it moving. We don't talk about it. And it's like, nah, let's have the conversation, and like, about everything that you're dealing with, whether it's trauma or good stuff, like, let's talk. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is like just getting to the point, like you said, of just talking and saying and feeling okay to say the good, to say the bad, and just be comfortable in that. But it's just uncomfortable to talk.
Yeah, I mean, that can be sometimes the hardest part, is just starting a conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what you're doing is all you can do, and and them seeing it through you is going to be the biggest thing. And all the people around you, I know, I'm glad you reached out to be able to do this. And I've been able to, just from like meeting you, see the kind of all the things you've you faced and accomplished, and it really is inspirational, so thank you for being open to sharing.
Absolutely.
So I think a couple of the questions that I had for you when we were setting this up, one was like talking to your younger self, and then the other, we're running low on time, so I'm going to let you decide which one you want to talk to. Either talk to your younger self, say like what you would want to say to your younger self, or kind of what you would like to your son to learn from this journey. And you can maybe do both, because I think they could look very similar.
Yeah, I think that they definitely can look similar. Damn, that's a good question. Advice to my younger self and advice to Ace too. I'd probably say get to know you quick. Like, that's the one bit of advice, because I mean, had I tapped in even sooner and understood who I was as a person, and understand my value and what makes me special in this world, like, I could have doubled down on it a lot sooner. Like, I get to live my passion and my purpose daily, because I get to connect with people and help them with websites. It's one avenue, but I can take this same passion that I have for positively impacting people and do a million things, but I already have the core figured out. Like, I don't have to worry about that. So my advice to my younger self would be to do that, like, figure that out. And for Ace, I would want him to do the same thing. Like, I don't care if he never picks up a football in his life. Like, as long as you know what it is that makes you special and is your purpose and brings light to you, and you can execute that on a daily, then, like, do it. And if you can find a way to make money doing it, even better. Like, but just figure out what that is and do it. And I mean, the only other thing I might think of is, like, life is going to throw you curveballs. Like, it's going to happen. And the only sad part about it is, and the only thing that makes it like a true curveball is if it hits you and strikes you out. Like, but if you can take it and hit it, you're good. Like, you're going to be fine. Like, make the most out of a situation that's not supposed to be great. Like, you're going to get bad hands, but still make the most out of it. Learn from it. Keep it moving. But, like, don't expect everything to go great, because, like, Ace, one day you'll probably watch this, but, like, you're going to have a great life. Like, you're going to have everything you need in terms of clothes, candy. I don't know what the hell we're going to give you, bro. But, like, at the end of the day, you're going to have everything you've ever needed. But I cannot prepare you for the things that are, like, hard, that are going to come your way. I don't know what it's going to be. Hopefully it's not what I had to go through with my dad. But no matter what, you're going to go through these things, and you got to bounce back. Like, you have to bounce back or hit it harder. If it's coming at you head on, knock it out. So that's the advice I'd give him. I was looking dead in the camera too, so I got you, boy.
And most importantly, I mean, he's not going to be alone doing it.
Yeah, no, not at all. I said, God said the same. I'll be here for a good long time, and I'll be able to help him out. But no matter what, our tribe is so strong, man. Between her family, my family, that boy is loved. And yeah, I mean, I think that's really all I got to say on that, actually.
That was perfect. Thank you for that. And then the last thing is, and you may have already just said it, but the last thing would be, if there was one thing that you would want, anybody listening to really take away from everything you've shared today, what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll circle back. I mean, definitely what I just said about, like, making the most out of these curveballs that happen to you. I know it's easier said than done, but specifically the imposter syndrome line. Like, your imposter syndrome is your X factor. Or really, if you don't even think about it in a professional context, like, whatever your inferiority is or whatever makes you think that you're less than is actually why you're greater than. And, like, take that to heart. Like, literally use that for your fuel for why you are special. Anytime you're faced with one of those thoughts about, like, oh my God, I am less than because of this, just replace that with, like, nah, I am more than because of this, and flip your perspective. And it's not to say that these thoughts won't come. It's just more like, whenever they come, how you perceive it means everything. And then that dictates how you act. If you act in fear, nothing is going to come out of it. But if you act as in, like, no, like, I am who I say I am, and move forward, you're good. I think that's my bit of advice for y'all.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, there was a lot of you sharing this story today that I've known you for a little bit, but that I haven't heard, and I didn't know. So I appreciate you being open in this space and being vulnerable. And I know that it's really going to, make an impact on people listening. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You're doing amazing things. Love the podcast. Love you. I pray to God that this is the one to go viral. Let's see.
Let's do it. Thank you all for listening.